This is Creative to Creative, powered by Motion by Design. AI still doesn't do much use for us as an industry. Like, there are certain little things that it helps, but the general public perception is, our problems are solved, but it's not yet. It might be in the future, but It's interesting because there's obviously a huge difference between the public perception and what's actually happening in the industry in this space. Are you seeing agencies discuss this quite regularly at the moment?
For sure. It's a topic that's never too far away from people's lips. I actually did a poll last week inside of my community that I call Forum, and the poll was, how are you using AI? And overwhelmingly, I think 80% of people are using it to generate ideas, directions, concepts, and so forth. About 15% are using it to create what we would call underlying elements, so things that they use to make something. But only about 10% were using it in any form of what I call the final deliverable. Like, are you creating is AI generating something that you are putting out in the world and getting paid for? And only about 10% of them said, oh, here's the other thing, is I always ask people, have you lost a job? Have you been beaten by AI because it's going to do the work instead of you or your studio? And I've never heard of one person say yes. So all this fear mongering of like, oh, we're all going to lose our jobs. Not this year.
Down the road, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Next year it could be a problem.
We spend a lot of time on AI. Like, our whole team meet for an hour a week and discuss AI, how we can utilize it, how we can make our jobs easier and more efficient. Because obviously, if you can pass that efficiency on to your team and your clients, you're in a good spot. But we definitely see it could be a huge help in the near future, but it's not a big thing yet. It's just a few little tools and things that might shave an hour or half an hour of your time off here and there, type of thing.
Yeah, it's a very cool tool, and I'm excited to see how it's going to actually empower all of us to do more and be more creative. So,
I've got the personal opinion that once AI hits the market, it's kind of like the Canvas of the world. There'll be 90% of everyone using AI to create stuff, but that 10% of people who are doing something unique will be able to charge more for their work because it sort of sticks out even more, and they take that positioning of, we create something that no one else will be able to create. And at the moment, all the AI stuff looks and feels the same, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I think it's a good example because if I go to a social media account of a brand, I can pretty easily tell, this is a team running Canva and they're using those templates and they're making great stuff. It's good. But yeah, I should say it's not great. It's good. But to create great, we're human beings. We get so bored. Like, if I showed you Mid-Journey images that came out, a year or two ago, today you would say, oh my God, that is so boring. At the time, we just thought it was the coolest, craziest, oh my God, it blew our minds. But we pretty quickly normalize and we say, okay, sure, that tool can create something this good. But as humans, we quickly recognize, yeah, but that's not the same as something that's truly original and unique from a group of humans that are truly innovating.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's a really good pathway into positioning, I reckon. What do you think?
Okay, sure, take it.
So in terms of brand and creatives positioning themselves out there, so obviously the people who listen to this podcast are everyone from freelancers to people who run agencies. How important is the positioning in the corporate world? And sort of, you said we all work together, which is great, and I think our industry is very, very close-knit, but how do you differentiate yourself from your mate over here who runs a very similar company or potentially one of the same?
Well, so if we're talking, we can talk about positioning like as individuals, because that's even a thing. But if we're talking about the positioning of a studio, or a creative company compared to another, I would say, I'll just give an example, and it will set the stage for this conversation. Because every creative company wants to do great work. but great work really only comes from great clients. And how do you break through to great clients, right? You've got to have awareness and presence and be known for something. And where does that come from? Well, that comes from being very well positioned, meaning who are you? Who do you say you are? Does your work back it up? And are you sticky? Are you original? Are you unique and different? So if you can do that, the power of that is illustrated in this little example I'll give you. And I have to be careful here because this client of mine a couple of weeks ago was sending me a text, and I can't say the names, so I'll be careful. But he texted me to basically say, Joel, you were right about positioning because we just got awarded our very first 6-figure project with no pitching, no competing. Like, we started a conversation with this major international entertainment brand that anyone here would know if I said the name. And he said, the reason we started this conversation with them was because of how we were positioned. And as we went through the conversation, understanding what their problems were, figuring out what the solutions were that we could create for them, we held to that positioning based on our expertise. And he said what that ultimately culminated in after months of conversations and negotiations was this client said, yes, you win. Go do this project for us. It's going to be great. And he was blown away because he was saying this years before his company was, well, positioned like everybody else. It was, we are a creative studio and we're collaborative and we're passionate about design and, whatever, experts in 2D, 3D, whatever all that stuff was, right? That's really generic. And they would have never, ever, ever gotten this opportunity or won this project had they stayed where they were, which was generic, milquetoast. And so for him, this transformation, and it took years, but the transformation was this moment when he's texting me saying, oh my God, you were right. So I think that's a really fun example of the difference it can make, right? It's the thing that sets the stage. Like if you run a studio, there's always this moment when you put a big proposal in front of somebody, right? The potential for a big project, or you're on a big pitch or something, and the client says no. And you look back later and you say, oh, our price was too high, or they didn't like our work, or. And the really smart companies will look back and say, you know what? Right from the very start, we weren't properly positioned. We were never respected as experts. They never trusted us. They never really valued what we can do and what our expertise does. And you fast forward later, when you're losing the proposal, you think it's about the price or you think it's about something else. But really, it's that you failed to be properly positioned because they gave the project to the expert, to the person that they really trust and believe can produce the value and the solution and all that. So, sorry, I'm rambling.
It's really good. I think that everything you said is very important, and positioning yourself as the expert is definitely a difficult thing as well to do, especially if you're trying to pick what niche and what industry and whether you go down a certain path in terms of product, or do you do just 3D or 2D? It sounds simple, but it's also quite difficult to get to that point and risk it all, really, isn't it? You're risking it for the biscuit.
Oh, it's very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things that I take owners through. It's a process that I call navel gazing, where you can spend weeks, months, some people spend years trying to decide, who are we? What do we stand for? What's our expertise? And a lot of people get hung up because they think it's about the skills, right? Am I 2D or am I 3D? And I would say that's not a strong positioning. Or is it about the product that we do, like our deliverables? We do commercials, we do promos, right? We do design. No, that's not your positioning, right? Is it your vertical? We help automotive brands, we help pharmaceutical brands. maybe. The real fun way to position is what I would call a horizontal. Like, what's your reason? What's your why? Right? Like, we help brands that make people laugh. Well, that's a really interesting and narrow positioning. It's very sticky, but there's a lot of opportunity to take that out into the world. So anyways, that's a little quick crash course in how I approach positioning.